oh no, I've got a tenant or a squatter living in a house in probate and I need to sell it. What do I do? We get into that next. Welcome back to the channel featuring the leading probate real estate team in all of California. I'm Brendan Mohr, Realtor, Masters Club Life member, and certified probate and trust specialist by the California Association of Realtors.
And I'm Bill Heyman. I'm a licensed California professional fiduciary, as well as I'm a licensed California real estate broker. And I'm also a registered and bonded legal document assistant specializing in probate and trust administration work.
Now go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you've got a house to sell, we can help you avoid the cost and headache of probate and trust administration. Those services come with the listing at a phenomenal discount with no upfront fees, saving families thousands in costs. We can even help with the petition to determine succession, the primary residence process. Our contact info is in the About section. Don't wait, reach out today. So you have a house in probate and you have a tenant, or even worse, a squatter living in that house and you want to sell it. What do you do? Now, this situation comes up somewhat frequently in probate, right? Yeah. Especially with a family member who is an heir of the estate and they're entitled to a portion of that estate and they're living in the house. So Bill, what are some things they can do here?
Yeah, unfortunately, when you do have a tenant or God forbid, a squatter that won't leave, there are some things you can do. And the first few things I would suggest is talk to them and ask them to leave and tell them, look, we need to sell the house. Just ask them to leave. And if they won't do that, the next thing I would suggest you do is, depending on the situation, you have either a 30 or 60-day notice. I believe it's called a notice to quit or notice to leave. Have it officially served on them. I wouldn't suggest serving it to them yourselves. I would hire a professional process server to go and serve them, and then they'll supply you with a proof of service document, which is good to have, because you'll need that if you end up having to go through the eviction process. You'll need to show that you served them that. The other option is, which I've seen work with a few situations that we've had with investors, they'll come up with what's called cash for keys. And that's simply where you go to the tenant or the squatter and you say, look, I'll give you $1,500, or I'll give you $2,000, or I'll give you $3,000 if you leave. Sometimes that works. Sometimes they'll take the money and they'll leave. And that's a good way to get it done as well. The last resort is to start an eviction process, a legal eviction process. If you do that, it can get expensive, it can get drawn out. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but sometimes you have to do that. Now, there are times that maybe you don't want to do an eviction process because heck, maybe it is a family member that's, or an heir that's living in there that won't leave, and you don't really want to drag a family member through an eviction process. So if your last resort is the eviction process and you don't really want to do it, the home can still be sold, Brendan, can't it?
Sure it can. And we've done this. In fact, in certain areas of California, especially within the greater Sacramento region, we may actually have a buyer for you in that situation. But we'll get into that. So the home can be sold, but with the tenant still in occupancy, it is likely the home will have to be sold to an investor. Typically somebody who would be the homeowner for their primary residence is not going to buy that house.
Probably
because
not.
You have to understand that the buyer is going to have to deal with the tenant occupancy. They're not sure if that person's going to move out by close of escrow. And when they're dealing with everything that goes into, say, getting a loan and things like rate locks and stuff like that, they need the house to close by a certain date, so they just can't take that risk by even offering on a house in this particular situation. So that's why it usually is not, somebody for their own home. An investor will wait, but it'll likely be sold at a discount or maybe even a significant discount given these situations, because that buyer is the one that is going through the cost and headache of removing the tenant or squatter after it has sold. So you just have to understand, and perhaps you're somebody who has been the tenant of a house where your landlord has decided to sell the house. Now, what the landlord knows is that the house is going to sell for more if they make it vacant. It's going to present better, most likely. Now, maybe you were just such a great tenant, you had a great tenant landlord relationship where you allowed showings, you made the house immaculate every time for showings. Now that is actually really rare. So that's great if you were that person, but most often it isn't. In these situations, you're probably not even going to be able to get showings inside the house. You're going to have to sell it what's called, or rather, subject to inspection. And that means they get an offer accepted and they don't even see the house until after an offer is accepted, if they can even get access at all. So you have to understand, it's probably not going to sell for fair market value in those situations. It's best if you can take some of those steps that Bill had talked about and try to get them out, and hopefully you're successful.
Yeah. Just to throw this in, you discussed it briefly, is when you sell a house that's got a tenant in it that won't leave, you're basically passing on a huge problem to the buyer and saying to the buyer, you deal with it. And that's why you're likely going to have to sell it at a discount in that situation.
Yep. And if you have any questions about this, or you have a house to sell in this type of situation, please reach out to us, because we may be able to help you, especially if you need somebody to help you through the probate process. We can do that at a substantial discount.